I'm mostly proud of JFF Live and the kit sponsorship of Umbro. And as a matter of fact, all my sponsors, because I had to work very hard for each and every one of them because
I can imagine
a reputation that there is a black hole at the Federation. So every single sponsor, and I signed a lot of deals locally and internationally, took blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of effort and negotiations and promises. And then you have to put your name and your word on the line because of the stigma. I remember a friend of mine said to me when I was going to the JFF in 2017, he said, Sophie, they're going to give you a basket to carry water. And I didn't understand what that meant. But I did a lot, but I can promise you, had my recommendations been fully implemented, I would have done 10 times what I did.
I can appreciate that.
Welcome, Sports Nation, to Sports DTM, the sports channel where we call sports down the middle. You can expect the latest in sports news, views, and reviews from our resident analysts. No sports topic is too controversial, and no team or player is above criticism. So just smash that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to make sure you don't miss out on our balanced offering of riveting sports content. And don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. Welcome to Sports DTM.
Greetings, sports fans. Welcome to another episode of Sports Down the Middle. I'm your host, Adrian. And today we have with us a very special guest. She's a former Director of Marketing and Business Development at the JFF. Sophia Harris joins us. She's currently the CEO of Law Global Consulting, LGC. Welcome to Sports DTM, Sophia. Happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I think it's so important for us to be having these discussions in the interest of football. And it's my honor to be here.
Great. All right, Sophia. Tell the DTM viewers, who is Sophia Harris?
Wow, okay. Well, I'm not that young, so I'll keep it brief.
Okay.
I've been in business now, running businesses and helping startup companies, working in a plethora of industries for over 24 years as a senior executive. And long story short, I decided to go into football after assisting as a director in developing an economic zone in 2017, because I'd never worked in an international sport before. And as an advocate of brand Jamaica, and as a person with passion for manufacturing and the export of brand Jamaica, I thought it would be still aligned with purpose, still directly related to what my passion was, but a completely different space. And I saw tremendous opportunity there. And that's where that story began. And the rest is, as they say, history.
Great. Thank you. Well, Sophia, I'm joined today by my two colleagues, Ricardo and Tyrone. We call him Tigat. And one of the things that we do when we have guests on our show is that we ask them to tell us your teams, the local and international sports, football, basketball, cricket, jacks, dandy shandy. Tell us what were the sports? What sports? What are your teams?
I don't think it's a fair question to ask me to pick a local team, considering I'm so close still to all the leagues and all the clubs and all the players. And I don't want to lose any friends anymore.
That's fine.
So locally, I love them all. I have a warm spot in my heart for Arnett Gardens, Junglist. And
red there.
Waterhouse, yes. Yeah, so I have a warm spot for Waterhouse as well. And also some of the really great reggae girl superstars that went to the World Cup came through that system. So I'm a fan of the Premier League and the Women's Premier League, all football. And to be honest, when I went to the JFF, my knowledge of football was to be desired. And I quickly focused on becoming an expert. And now I have a fondness for the sport and a love for all local football. So I won't select a favorite, but I have two that I'm pretty close to.
And
internationally, the Reggae boys and Reggae girls. Come on now, what do you expect me to say?
Obviously.
But I can say before working at the JFF, my team was Germany.
Oh, Ricardo will be very happy about
my
that.
God, no.
Oh, Lord. Oh,
And
oh
JFF
my
had the same
goodness.
reaction you had.
I don't know. You are going so well.
Did you make that decision by looking behind Ricardo's back and see
Oh,
that jersey?
no, I didn't. I didn't. I have always been a fan of this structured discipline and organization of how the Germans play football. And as I am a very organized and structured person, a little bit OCD. So I'm a huge fan of how they train and how they play. I also like Manchester United.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm telling you, the view's going downhill from here.
Miss Harris, I spare no questions now. I'm gonna ask you some hard questions.
All right.
Okay, forgive me. I hope I'm.
That's fine. All right. Any other sports you like?
Oh yeah, I'm obsessed with golf.
Okay.
Which I don't think many people like golf, but I've always been obsessed with golf. And I think one day when I have free time, I'm going to take up golf lessons. And my son says he's coming with me, so it'll be a family thing. Okay. And I'm really a fan of all sports, especially now having worked with international teams and Jamaican teams that have played internationally. I'm such a fan of sports. I love tennis and netball. And I'm now becoming a fan of rugby. Good. Exposed to it closely with the Jamaica Olympic Association.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And do you play any sports? Did you play any at high school or at University of Miami?
I was not athletically inclined. However, I did play badminton.
That's close enough.
I went immaculate.
That's close enough. Great.
I was a dancer.
Shout out to all immaculate girls out there.
Listen, shout out to all the immaculate girls, all the UE alumni, and all the University of Miami alumni.
There you go. We want to talk a little bit more about your role at the JFF. What was your role at the JFF, and what was it like marketing the national teams, the Reggae boys, the Reggae girls?
All right. So when I interviewed for my role at the JFF, the then General Secretary was Raymond Grant. And immediately after our first meeting, he reached out to me and said, we want to make you an offer. And I had several offers on the table at the time. However, in my research leading up to my interview session, I'm always prepared for a meeting. I realized there was such tremendous potential for the international football teams, the national football program that was untapped.
Right.
A plethora of resources that were not being capitalized on, and a huge earning potential. And it came to my attention also, the kit sponsor was on the way out, so they had no kit sponsor.
Kappa.
To be honest, all the sponsors were on the way out. And there really weren't any sponsors, any current contracts that were, there were probably 2 that were on the verge of expiration, maybe a month away, and they had no interest to renew.
But no sponsors at the time.
Right, there were just 2, and was very, very minor. And then the big sponsor, Digicel, was en route out as well as Romai. So there really was nothing there, but I love a challenge, right? And I saw the vision, I saw the potential, and I said, you know what? Maybe I'm being called to go there because I know that I can do some good there. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was a challenge because the systems there and the senior administration there is from the old way of doing things. The old school of sports development. And so as much as I had a lot of support because my vision and my plans were aligned with CONCACAF, FIFA, the direction of international football. So on paper, they subscribed fully to what I wanted to do. And I'm also very convincing, right? However, when it came down to execution, it's very, very difficult to accomplish or fill the gap then, bridge the gap from where the federation was to where the federation truly wanted to be without unanimous support, not only in terms of persons, but infrastructure, resources, policies, procedures.
basically
mindset.
had a tall order to really climb.
Oh, it was a tall order, and most people don't realize I started on June 5th and Captain Burrell passed on June 6th.
Okay.
So I fell into a situation that was literally turned on its head.
A roller coaster, yeah.
So it really was an uphill battle. And I think by the grace of God, the support of the entering administration, I was able to accomplish about 50% of my marketing plan that I did up for
some
the
of your
Federation.
strategic initiatives.
Yes. So, you know, there is some bureaucracy there. So it had to be circulated. Even my hiring had to be approved by the board. So I went through a series of vetting. My background had to be clean, you know, police record, everything.
Understand.
The gambit.
All the verification.
Verification, because it is an important
Rule.
federation. It's an important thing. Football is the biggest sport in the world.
Absolutely.
And to know that the fact of the matter is the local government does not provide all of the funding. So they have a lot of freedom and a lot of responsibility to represent the country with their own accord.
But tell me, Sophia, as you spoke about your role in marketing and developing, right? What are some of the strategic initiatives that you implemented during your tenure that you are most proud of? So
I'm most proud of what I was able to accomplish with the sponsorship deals against the odds, what I was able to accomplish with, in particular, the Umber sponsorship, because it was the first time in history the national football program has secured a top 10 sporting apparel sponsor. And against the backdrop of all of the controversy and everything else, I was able to do that. And then also JFF Live, I took the national football program digital, right? And I was saying to someone the other day, you know, I said, I stood up before the board in 2017 and I told them one day, and I said it at several management meetings, one day football is going to be played to an empty stadium. And they laughed at me.
Yeah.
And they started calling me last year.
You're like a little prophetess.
They called me when COVID and they said, how did you know? And I said, simple. Look at global trends. Look at FIFA launching the virtual World Cup. You think they launched it for fun? They understood where the world
what was coming.
Yeah.
And let me ask a question. As we touched on a little in sponsorship as we press along a little. You spoke about the perception out there that the JFF has in terms of being in a black hole. And I noted from just doing some research, you had about 16 regional and national brands, about 14 local brands in terms of that you got sponsorship, that you negotiated those deals. In a time where it's reported in me that the JFF doesn't have any sponsors at all, how were you able to do that in such a very short time?
All right, you have to have an understanding of commercialization of assets. And the truth of the matter is that there weren't many people at the Federation that had my international business experience and experience at high levels of business to understand how to do an audit of your assets, understand how the modern senior executives, their mindsets. So if you don't know how the language they speak, you don't understand what's of value to them, then how can you sell it to them? And then also I have integrity. I had a reputation. So when I sat at the table, they knew if I said, I'm going to do this, believe you me, if I have to destroy everything in the process to make sure I keep my word. They had nicknames for me at the JFF, and I won't tell you what they were.
We love to hear, but okay, that's fine.
I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter. And you can ask the general secretary, maybe he'll tell you, but they had nicknames for me. And so I'm not a walkover. And so if I sit at the negotiation table and say, this will be done, I don't oversell. And so they appreciated that. And I came prepared. I went to every meeting with data, with documentation. Most people didn't take the time to understand the restrictions that FIFA had laid out on CONCACAF for the tournaments, and they didn't understand what they could and could not sell. With my background in contract negotiations and reviews, I understood to read, understood what rights you had, do the investigation, and don't overpromise, underpromise and overdeliver.
Overdeliver, that's right. Sounds good to me.
once you get through 1 and 2 and they see that you're actually delivering and giving value, then the others, you have a precedence now and a track record.
Start to fall in line.
Right.
I think I heard one of my colleagues, Tyrone, trying to get in a question there. Tyrone?
In October, you said in a Gleaner article that by October 2017, you had prepared a marketing plan which was presented to the board by then General Secretary Raymond Grant. And you said that you told them that you're aware of the current global trend, and if you're not in the digital space, we're going to left behind.
That's
now,
right.
What did you mean by that?
All right. So one of the biggest, most important deals for me to negotiate was getting the Reggae girls on FIFA 19 EA Sports deal.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
Right. And so it was those kinds of things where you have to protect the intellectual property rights of the federation. So for example, when I went there, the JFF logo, Reggae Boyz logo, Reggae Girls logo, the JFF assets were not formalized, and I had to go and formalize them and have them trademarked. So that was one of the first things I did, because you now have to control your digital assets, your intellectual property rights. Once you have that and you have documented how you plan to commercialize it, how active will the teams be, profiles of the players, which I also did, which that information was not available. Let's put it that way when I got there. Then you have an asset that EA Sports is interested in, because you have profiles, you have trademarks, you have logos, you have brands. You can now take that to the digital world and say, look, I have virtual assets.
Yeah.
Now, I saw where this was going from 2017. I actually saw it before because I studied the space. And so what I meant then is what I'm saying now. Eventually, we're going to get to a place where all you're going to need for sports is avatars and the likeliness of all the players that you see out there now, the Ronaldos and everything else. So they don't have to play as many games, because the future of sports is gaming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And until people understand that. And so I knew that when I saw FIFA giving away hundreds of thousands of US dollars when you win the virtual World Cup, I said, oh my goodness, the reason they're doing this is because they're investing in the future of this digital asset.
Great. What
I did there, I revamped the website. We launched JFF Live. I brought in the best digital team that I had. And we said, you know what? We're documenting everything. We're doing profiles. We're using up the studio that's been locked up for 2 years. We're taking cameras to the games. We're creating our own content. I started revamping the negotiations of the contracts to ensure we had access to download the content when the boys and the girls played away. I had to fight for that. All those games you see on YouTube, I had to fight for every single one of those games to be on JFF Live and not on TVJ and then vanish and we don't have any access to it.
Sophia, we're going to segue a little bit.
Sure.
A recent leaked audio between the Reggae Boyz and the Reggae Boy Damian Lowe and the JFF hierarchy says they had no sponsors. How were you able to get so many sponsors during your short period of time? And what advice would you give to them now?
Well, like I mentioned before, I mentioned how I got the sponsors, and it really is an understanding of all my business experience and understanding the environment I was in and just tough negotiation skills and understanding how to organize assets. So that's just many years of experience in international business and just my inherent talents, right? So I won't say I'm replaceable, but what I will say is that I can give advice and say to them, they worked alongside me, the new administration, for I think over 1.5 years or a year, because they came in after I was there for almost a year.
Back end, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they saw my playbook. And we spoke about, I actually took the president and the general secretary with me to a lot of the meeting tables. I didn't do this, a lot of these big deals. Yes, I negotiated and laid the groundwork, but the final discussions was a team effort with myself, Mike Ricketts, and Dalton Wint at the table. Yes, I would spearhead it because of my expertise, but without
they were actually there.
They were there. So they know the problem is there's only so much they could do with me as support, and especially with me not there anymore. And they're surrounded by an embedded system of old ways of thinking, old ways of doing things, and it's a lot of pressure.
You're a tough negotiator, and it's interesting that Ricardo just mentioned the leaked negotiation. What are your thoughts about that leaked negotiation?
Oh, the famous voice note.
The famous voice note.
Well, I'm an advocate of player rights, right? And I was one of those people who are pushing for the girls to get their contracts when they qualified for the World Cup at every meeting, right? So as much as I would defend my job, my role, and my federation publicly and during interviews at every management table, I defended the rights of the players. I tried to get us to book plane trips in advance to avoid also the chaos. I really tried to implement certain things to make things better for everyone, because if everyone gets along, everything is better in terms of international football development. The conflict will only cause problems for everybody, you know? So I respect Damian Lowe. I respect his intelligence, his strength. What I would say is that he should have declared that he was recording, because there's nothing wrong with it, but you must declare it legally.
Definitely.
Right? But I admire his preparation, his fortitude, and his strength.
Great.
As a negotiator, I would have started off with something in writing. And it is something that they know that I do. But like I said, I'm not there. You always start off with a draft. And so it should have begun, if this was a general negotiation about general terms of engagement for the players, and not a one-off ad hoc, which we shouldn't be doing. We shouldn't be doing ad hoc negotiations on a case-by-case basis. Then you start off with a draft, and if you need to iterate and tweak and have brief negotiations, people need to know they're being recorded, minutes need to be taken, and you need to negotiate a thing as if we are
transparent.
Equal. Yes, when we are equals, which means your points are valid, mine are valid. Let's put our cards on the table and let's reach a mutually agreeable, final decision. So I think that there's a culture of seeing all the players as little kids and not as professionals. And I think until that culture comes out, and a culture of systematic processes, procedures, protocols, standard operating procedures, which I was an advocate for, where things are documented and you have processes and procedures for doing things and not random phone calls. We prep for press releases, we prep for PR engagements, which were the things that I advocated for. If there were more, and I'm not trying to toot my horn here, but more professionals like me supporting them, things would be moving a lot more smoothly. The problem is, people don't understand the president is a non-executive member. He's not supposed to be involved in day-to-day. And the general secretary needs a team of administrative staff that are professionals who are understand modern global best practices. And until you get there, it is going to be a lot of peer pressure and old ways of doing things, pressuring them to just continue with the status quo, because two people, one person can't change a federation.
You said that the JFF is embedded in the old system, right? And I think for the leakage, this is why, this is only my opinion, that the recording was done. Because this thing has been going on for a period of time, right? JFF is only talking, and then when they're talking, they don't back, they have nothing in writing to say. So the players are left unpaid until a next match. So in my opinion, I think the recording, although it didn't tell tell them that they are being recorded, but in my opinion, I think it did the right thing by recording them to say, hey, look, I have it here. This is what you tell me. You're going to pay me this. And
well, let me tell you,
but you should have told it.
Lots of light. So I agree with you that light was shone on problems that exist.
Yeah.
And it needed to be shone on it, to be very honest. It's just, he must have known that there would be a backlash. So if you don't disclose, if you and I are on a call and I don't disclose I'm recording, you're going to be upset.
You're going to be upset.
How right I am, right? So that aside, a lot of good, I think, will come out of it because I'm an advocate for transparency.
give me a quick thoughts on player image rights. Should players get, should the JFF or any other federation or local bodies get any percentage of those image rights?
You know, I saw your YouTube video on this topic, and I shook my head because this is why you need to talk to me.
That's why we're talking to you now.
Because I spent almost 3 years studying this thing. It don't really go like that. So let me tell you how it goes. Because you wouldn't know unless you're in it, right?
Okay.
So unless you are on national duty, means that you're in gear, you're traveling with a team to play an international match. That's when you belong. Your branding, your image and likeness belongs to the federation. Once you are off duty, nobody can tell you what to do, which is why people go out and get their endorsements for competitor sneakers. Remember, we're sponsored by Umbro, but once you're not on national duty, that means you haven't been blocked to travel with a team or whatever. And you're just going about your club life or your personal life and you wear Adidas. I cannot call you and say anything to you. What I can ask you kindly not to do is go and big up Adidas in public because you're still a part of the national program.
That's the point that some of us are making. That's the point that some of us are making. Any reference to the national team, that's where you have a challenge.
Yes, and things you don't get a cut either. What happens is when there are contracts in place, the contracts stipulate that all of those rights belong to the JFF. JFF doesn't get a cut. That is theirs. They cannot take a cut off of anything you do outside of it. There's no such thing. We just ask for some consideration because everybody wants a piece of the pie. Yeah. And there's no need for us to battle over it. People don't belong to people.
There have been clamors in the football space and locally for the resignation of the JFF hierarchy. Do you think they should resign? Do you think there needs to be a restructure on the league?